Okay, playing Arquebus, the battles for northern Italy, 1495 to 1544. So we're talking Renaissance warfare, 2017 GMT wargame from the Men of Iron series, Volume 4 in particular. Trying out a bit of the Battle of Cerignola here, Kingdom of Naples, Italy, 28 April 1503. So we have basically a French army made up of French and Swiss troops against a Spanish army made up of Spanish and Landsknechts troops. Might want to say something about those guys later. Let's see. Let's take a look at one of these troop units. Yeah, so as I expected, these Landsknecht units are German, generally speaking. Germanic. So in game terms, they have the unit has a -2 Arquebus ranged fire capability there. Otherwise, it's a pikeman unit. 0 should be the close combat modifier, melee modifier. Movement allowance of 3. And disordered side, slower, and yeah, suffer in both close combat and ranged combat capability. So after the activation of the Swiss infantry on the French side, well, I guess it's French too, Swiss and French troops on the French side. Where to pick up? Well, they did their movement and fire as part of the move fire phase. Then you have phase C is shock phase. Won't talk anything about that for now until we have our first shock combat. Then you have the rally phase, which is phase D, and then we have E, the continuation phase. So if the completed activation was a free activation, which it was, because, well, at least because it was the first activation of the game, both players make a loss check. Loss check. So a loss check is a die roll to see if a player loses the game. At the end of every free activation, each player makes a loss check by rolling 1 die and adding their flight point total. If the die roll plus flight point total is greater than the flight level of that player in this battle, he loses. If both players' totals exceed, okay, simultaneous, there's a draw. Okay. Let's see, flight point total. So the accumulation of flight points should be tracked as they occur on the flight point track. Current flight level. Current flight level for each side. And is it flight points? Flight points for each side and a flight point track. Okay. Loss checks will be unnecessary as players will be unable. For much of the early parts of the game, loss checks will be unnecessary as players will be unable to exceed their flight level with their current flight point total plus the roll of 1 die. All right. So I'm going to move on. Let's see, where was that? Yeah, that was part of the continuation phase. Okay, if the game does not end due to loss check, pass or choose to continue with a battle or army activation. So I guess the French could try to move on to continue with their other battle here, their mounted formation, but I don't want the French to act with their mounted units yet. So I guess a pass is in order. But we'll go through the things here. So you cannot activate the battle that just activated unless the active player has only one battle. That's why I think the French cannot activate the infantry again. I guess the only option is the mounted formation here. Army activation can only follow in army activation. Army activation can only follow in army activation. Battle activation can follow activation of a battle, army, or standard. Non-active player may attempt to seize continuity. Okay, but no, I think the French is just going to pass. So, does it tell us? Okay, if not, we're there. Okay, so if the active player passes, the non-active player gets a free activation, proceeds to phase A. That's what I thought. So we start over at phase A for the Spanish side, and this is considered a free activation because the French passed. All right. Well, the question is, are the Spanish going to move at all? I'm not going to have the Spanish move. So we would, So, all right, so it's going to come back to the French, I think. Well, certainly in this first turn. But wait, there aren't turns in these early activations. So I'm going to say it's going to come back to the French, and they are going to activate their infantry again. Let's see. But now, technically, in game terms, I think the Spanish pass. Yeah, and then the French get a free activation. Okay, so they're going to use their move fire phase to advance to contact and fire at 1 hex range. Trying to remember, I don't think any of these Spanish units are going to be eligible for return fire. I probably should figure out what the difference between reaction and return fire is. All right, and then I will have a shock phase. Yeah, because certainly these Swiss pikemen, I mean, they're ready to go in for close. Oh. Yeah, no. The Arquebus, the Spanish Arquebus, did they miss an opportunity to fire? No, because they're very similar to the crossbowmen. They would have a -4 range, terrain, missile fire, non-artillery, long. Okay. It looks like they could have hit on a 9. So, I'm going to do that. I'm going to back up here. I don't want to. This isn't in any way, even in a solitary sense, any type of competitive play. So I'm going to back up the Spanish when they get after the French pass, because they don't want to act with their cavalry here. The Spanish are going to activate their sword and buckler and pikeman units here, because they're going to fire their arquebus. I'll look for a penalty of doing so. But so if it's -2, because they're all -2 arquebus on the counter, they're all -2 arquebus, and then there's -2 for the range at 2 hexes, which is 2 hexes to the French front line. So that's -4. So only if they roll a 9, -4 is 5. Will there be a disorder? Okay, so not surprisingly, no results from the Spanish arquebus fire. About return and reaction fire, it's nice that it's actually exactly what I would expect. So return fire is when a unit gets to fire after having been fired on. return fire. And reaction fire is when an enemy unit moves or charges into an adjacent frontal hex that does not already contain an enemy unit. So kind of returning enemy fire with fire and reacting to enemy movement with fire. So that all makes perfect sense. So I think so now we pick up with a yeah, I guess I need to figure out. So the Spanish have, so that would have been an activation with all of the brown Spanish units here, which would be the infantry in this case. The red formation is spread out. You got 2 units way over here, one here, and a 4th one right here off the screen. So how do they act? Yeah, how do I handle them? Okay, so to be in command is when a unit is in its command range, in its leader's command range, makes perfect sense, or adjacent to a unit of its battle that is in its leader's command range, which basically means stringing or linking, however you want to look at it. So in this case, it is counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then this unit is adjacent to this unit, which is in command. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So actually all of the Spanish cavalry are in command. So I think it'd be here during the continuation phase of the Spanish activation. How would he do it? The non-active player, that would be the French in this case, may attempt to seize continuity, but the French aren't going to do that. Oh, here it is. If no seizure attempt occurs, that's, yeah, the French aren't going to try to seize the initiative here. Oh, there's still roll the die for continuation. Okay, so roll the die for continuation. Okay, so for the leader information, we've got Gonzalo Cordoba. Name to the 2 tiny stars center left means that this is the overall commander. +2 in the white circle lower left is charisma. The 3 in the red box in the top right is its activation rating. So that's what I'm about to roll against. And 6 in the black circle center right is the command range, which is what I was counting as I was checking to make sure all the cavalry was in command. And then 5 in the black box lower right is the movement allowance. So what I'm going to do for continuation is I'm going to roll against that activation rating. There's no effectiveness rating on Cordoba here. Okay, so I'm going to roll against his activation rating. Oh, okay, so 6. So he does not continue. Does not continue. So that means that the French get a free activation, which is good. Now the French will advance, conduct their ranged combat, and get ready for shock combat. So before I advance the French line here, I do want to make sure, like with the first unit, let's move the Swiss pikemen. Let's see, 1, 2. Yeah, so we'll go this way. I'm going this way. The choice is this way or this way. I'm going this way because I actually want, yeah, I'll overlap. I want to overlap on that side. So when I move forward with the Swiss pikemen, they don't have any, they have no ranged combat capability. Does this generate reaction fire from the pikemen? Because I talked earlier about how they don't get return fire. Okay, so I think this does apply. First I was wondering why it matters you only get to fire once per activation, but now I see by the end of this rules block. So reaction fire, non-active players units only, so we're talking about the Spanish here. So let's see, I would want to, I think I'd want to respond with this Landsknecht pikeman unit with Arquebus fire capability. When any enemy unit moves or charges into an adjacent frontal hex that does not already contain an enemy unit, a reaction fire is resolved the instant such movement takes place. So I know I'm rolling for it now. Genitors, longbow, and light cavalry. This is pikemen. May fire each time an enemy unit enters their frontal hex. So they don't have a limit. Okay, that is a difference. So I mentioned this before, but we have a Spanish Genitor unit right there. So they are in play. They are part of this battle here. All other non-artillery. This is non-artillery. Missile unit. It is a missile unit. May only reaction fire once per activation. Mark them with a fired marker for the rest of this activation, unless the unit is mounted crossbow or mounted arquebus. Again, we have a mounted crossbow unit in this game. One of them, it looks like. I can see from here. Okay, only one missile unit, artillery or not, owner's choice, can reaction fire at an enemy unit when it enters a hex, no matter how many. So this is it. No matter how many units are adjacent to the hex. There is no reaction fire to reach. Okay. So, point is, he moves here. They do not, well, for that matter, they don't all get to fire. This unit at 2 hexes, this at 1, this at 1, this at 2. No, it's one unit. Looks like that's a hard limit. So, this Landsknecht unit is going to reaction fire. I'll conduct that fire and mark the unit. So for calculations, the -2 on the unit, what do they call that? The missile fire DRM from the counter, -2, is offset by the +2 for 1 hex range. So that's, they cancel each other. So they basically need, a 5 or better to disorder their target. They rolled a 3, so that missed. And then, although I doubt you'd have to do that in a small game like this, but just for completeness or whatever, let's do that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move all these guys down the line, and they will all conduct reaction fire, and they're all -2 arquebus. So the Spanish actually fired, I think, just a bit less than what average. I think they did. They only got 1 disorder. Disorder. So they've all fired. Let's see. Well, I guess there wouldn't be. The rest of these guys would move up, and then. All right, now. Checking the French leader here. He's got a command. His activation rating matches the Spanish commander, but his command radius is 1 less at 5, and his charisma is +1 as compared to Cordoba's +2. Okay, so I think we do go on to shock phase. So during the battle activation, after all movement and firing for the activated battle is complete, shock combat and charges may be initiated. So how do I do this? I'm sure these Swiss pikemen are ready for a fight. The active player designates which of his units are attacking, which defending units, including charges. Pre-shock activity. So it's going to be every every unit ahead with doubling up on the flank there. Alright, so pre-shock activities. One at a time, the active player places each charging unit adjacent to, but they're not charging. Any reaction fire caused by this? No. We already had reaction fire earlier. Roll. Yeah, I think we still do pre-shock activities. Roll for terrain-induced disorder. Oh, I guess I do have to figure out if there's terrain-induced disorder. Roll for Swiss shock reluctance. Oh, I think I have to roll for Swiss shock reluctance as well, because these are Swiss pikemen. And retreat before combat. The Spanish are definitely not going to retreat before combat. They're behind ramparts in a ditch. I doubt this is going to be very good for the French. The defender attempts any countercharge. There aren't any countercharges. The active player resolves all his shocks and charge attacks in any order he wishes. Okay, I think that's... Yeah, so... I do need to figure out, is there a disorder check, terrain-induced disorder check for... Oh, you know what? The disordered... No, I'll see what happens. I'll try to shock with the disordered Swiss pikemen anyways. So, yeah, let me check on some things. Okay, so I do think that each of these attackers needs to roll. This is the Cerignola terrain chart that's printed on the map. This is the map right here. So next to the map, here's the terrain chart right down here. It's ditch has a C note here. Come down here in step 2 of the shock phase, check for disorder. That's exactly when I read it earlier, the pre-shock activities. Step B, roll for terrain-induced disorder checks. And then you're going to disorder at this time if they fail. So basically all this text means if the attack is crossing a ditch hex side that does not contain a rampart on its hex side, in other words, that's the opposite side from the Spanish here. Roll for disorder. The unit is disordered on a 5+. So there's a die roll modifier for each of these rolls. The unit's shock defense DRM, which is the top left number on the counters, and they don't get angle of attack position advantage. So it was as you would expect, it was pretty devastating. So you might say the poor luck in the Spanish firing was now offset by the devastating effect of attacking across the ditch. So all was at 4 units additionally disordered. Pretty bad. And I wonder what would have happened if the unit that was already they easily passed their disorder check, but I wonder what would have happened if they had been disordered again. Okay, I think now I have to deal with Swiss shock reluctance. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and back up here and straighten things out. There's a battle-specific rule that applies here. The end result is all these guys are going back. They're not disordered because except for the one that was fired at. I think that's the one that was disordered from fire. Because of basically an environmental effect here. So the Spanish defenses. The Spaniards are deployed behind a deep ditch. So here's the ditch, and a dirt-walled rampart. It's the rampart under there. Giving them exceptional positioning. What is worse for the French is that the day was so dusty that they could not see these defenses until they actually reached them. Therefore, any French unit that moves adjacent to a Spanish unit, separated by a ditch hex side, so it's all these guys here, with or without rampart, must stop immediately. I stopped anyways. That unit may fire, so their fire was okay. Did I fire? No, I can't remember if I fired. I hope I fired with my crossbows down there. Yeah, I can't remember Yeah, I can't remember. Okay. They may fire but cannot shock attack during that activation. This restriction applies until a friend. Okay, so I do think that there's more to the rule here, but I think that that's enough. I think that's enough to show that they cannot. So they moved up here. I wanted these guys to fire, and then I wanted them to conduct shock combat. That I don't think that's going to be allowed again by the battle specific rules here.